You don't have a job. You have a religion, and your boss is the high priest. Every morning, millions of people perform the same sacred rituals: the alarm bell, the dress code, the daily pilgrimage to a fluorescent-lit temple. Not because they want to, but because they were taught to worship productivity. You were told it's just work. But what if it's something much deeper and much more dangerous? Today, you're going to see how corporations turned obedience into a belief system, and why walking away feels like heresy. But the real question is, who built this altar, and what are you really sacrificing on it? You walk into the office. Carpeted floors, identical desks, soft light humming from the ceiling. And in every corner, silence, like a chapel before the sermon begins. They say it's just work, but look closer. There's a dress code, a creed, a hierarchy. There are chants: we move fast, we think big, we're like a family. And there's even a sacred text, your employee handbook. Carefully worded, constantly updated, filled with commandments disguised as policies. None of this is accidental. Since the 1970s, Fortune 500 companies have invested billions in behavioral psychology and organizational theory, not just to improve productivity, but to build identity systems. Because if they can shape how you see yourself, they don't need to control your time. You'll do it for them. In 2022, a leaked internal memo from a major tech firm described employees as disciples of innovation. Another company, their motto, do good, obey the mission. And let's not forget WeWork's infamous slogan, elevate the world's consciousness. These aren't companies, they're belief systems with a payroll. They don't ask for performance, they ask for faith. And the deeper you believe, the harder it becomes to walk away. That's not management, that's devotion. There was a time when companies offered jobs. Now they offer purpose. Not tasks, missions. Not positions, callings. We're not hiring employees, we're inviting missionaries. Yes, that was a real quote from a Fortune 100 CEO in 2019. But missionaries don't clock out. They don't question orders, and they don't negotiate terms. You begin to feel it, the pressure to believe, to embody the culture, to speak in their tone, think in their language, and smile like it's your own reflection in the glass. And if you don't feel aligned with the mission, maybe you're the problem. Because this isn't just a place to work, it's a place to belong, to serve, to sacrifice. You wear the badge, you chant the values, you attend the retreats not for rest, but for revival. You celebrate wins you don't own. You mourn losses that don't affect you, but somehow it still feels personal. Ever wondered why you feel guilty taking a sick day? Or why you check your emails during your honeymoon? That's not ambition, that's indoctrination. A 2021 Harvard study found that 68% of employees would take a pay cut to feel their job has meaning. Translation: they'll pay to stay inside the illusion. And here's the trap. Once meaning becomes the currency, exploitation becomes invisible. Unpaid overtime? Part of the journey. Weekend calls? Shows commitment. Burnout? A necessary sacrifice. It's a theology of work, where overextension is holiness and silence is salvation. The system reframes sacrifice as significance. You're not exhausted, you're honored. You're not stuck, you're chosen. And when you collapse, they send flowers, then post about you on LinkedIn. #gratitude, #legacy, #team spirit. No one notices the burnout altar at the center of the office because they're too busy lighting candles on it. The workplace doesn't look like a trap. It looks like a calling. If this chapter made you look at your job differently, consider liking this video. It tells the algorithm this truth matters and helps others find their way out of the fog too. But before we continue, let me ask you one thing. If your company is a religion, who's profiting from your worship? You didn't apply for a job. You pledged allegiance to a cause. Somewhere along the way, doing your job became defending a belief. And belief, as every cult leader knows, is more powerful than logic. Because if they can make you believe, they don't need to explain. They don't need to justify. Every irrational deadline, every unpaid weekend, every burned-out colleague, all covered in a single phrase: it's for the mission. And missions, by design, are unquestionable. They're always urgent, always bigger than you, and always just one sacrifice away from finally making it. Sound familiar? In 2016, Amazon held a private leadership summit where one executive declared, "Employees must bleed the brand." The room clapped, not because they agreed, but because disagreement had become heresy. That's how the cult works. Doubt becomes betrayal, silence becomes strategy, and the illusion of unity becomes a weapon. The deeper you buy into the mission, the more dangerous it becomes to question it. You don't want to be that person, the one who breaks the spell. So you smile, you nod, you stay late. You say things like, "This is what it takes," even when everything inside you whispers, "This feels wrong." But here's the part no one tells you. The mission isn't real. It's a narrative device, crafted in boardrooms, refined by consultants, tested on focus groups, wrapped in slides, and sold back to you as a calling. It doesn't exist to liberate you. It exists to absorb you. At Facebook, employees were taught to move fast and break things. At Uber, always be hustling. At Theranos, do not speak to the press ever. And at one unicorn startup, a real quote: "We're changing the world so sleep is optional." These aren't just slogans. They're rituals, codes of conduct masquerading as motivation. You're not working, you're preaching. The mission becomes your mantra, the brand becomes your identity, and loyalty becomes currency. That's how the cult grows, not with force, but with belief. Groupthink becomes gospel. Dissent becomes toxicity. And if someone leaves, they're not quitting a job, they're being erased. You've seen it. The sudden unfollow, the awkward goodbye, the Slack message deleted, the legacy wiped clean, the story rewritten overnight. They weren't a cultural fit. That's not how jobs end. That's how belief systems protect themselves. And here's the darkest part. The more the mission fails, the more you're told to believe harder, to work longer, to double down on values. Because in every cult, failure isn't a signal to stop. It's proof that the sacrifice wasn't big enough. So you stay, you grind, you silence your doubts, you convince yourself this is just what it takes. Not because they forced you, but because somewhere along the way, you forgot where the job ended and where the faith began. If this video is revealing things you've always felt but never said out loud, subscribe to Bull Secrets. We don't preach, we investigate what they've hidden in plain sight. And the next revelation goes deeper than belief. Because if your loyalty is blind, who's holding the leash?
They don't just hire you, they initiate you. It starts the moment you accept the offer. You're not entering a job, you're stepping into a rite of passage. The onboarding process isn't administrative, it's symbolic. Laptop, ID badge, swag bag, each item handed to you like sacred tools from a higher order. Then come the videos, The values, the welcome email from the CEO, pre-written, mass-delivered, but somehow reverent. You're told you're part of something bigger, not a business, a movement. And like all movements, there's a conversion ritual. In your first week, you're overloaded with information, not facts, philosophies. You learn how to speak, how to present, how to think. They don't teach you the product, they teach you the belief system. And the faster you absorb it, the more they praise you. They'll say you're aligned. They'll say you get it. What they mean is you've surrendered quickly. You're no longer you, you're one of us. By week 2, you're already performing. You've learned what words to avoid, which smiles to give, which opinions are safe to say out loud. You haven't just joined a team, you've been indoctrinated. The rituals deepen. Every Monday there's a town hall. You hear phrases like, crushing it, doubling down, living our values. Everyone claps in sync, even when there's nothing to celebrate. Applause becomes a reflex. Doubt becomes a risk. One colleague raises a question slightly off script. The air shifts. Eyes dart. The meeting moves on. By the end of your first month, you've learned something important. Conformity is the safest currency. You learn to post on Slack with emojis. You like every leadership update instantly. You smile in Zoom calls even when you're exhausted. And you write things like, so grateful to be here. Not because you feel it, but because everyone else is saying it. This is not workplace culture. This is ritualized performance. Even feedback becomes part of the theater. They'll say, we're a feedback culture, but challenge anything sacred, and suddenly the tone shifts. True dissent doesn't get debated, it gets quietly sidelined. That project you wanted? Reassigned. That raise you expected? Delayed. That promotion you deserved? Given to someone more in sync. That's the invisible punishment, not for failing, but for thinking independently. So you adapt. You start using their words, impact, velocity, ownership. You start working longer, not because they asked you to, but because everyone else is, and no one wants to be the first to log off. It's not spoken, it's not in the manual, but it's everywhere. The way people pause before they speak, the way cameras are always on, the way silence becomes suspicion. You start dreaming in company language. You wake up thinking about deadlines. You check your notifications like a ritual prayer. You've been converted, not because of pressure, but because of the invisible rewards. Praise, recognition, belonging. Not to a team, to a doctrine. And just like that, you forget there was ever another way to work, to think, to be. You don't remember who you were before the badge, before the mission, before the belief. And that's when the system knows it's won. Not when you comply, but when you believe it was your idea.
It doesn't happen all at once. Disillusionment arrives quietly. You're on a call, nodding to another leadership update, when something small breaks the illusion. Maybe it's a phrase, maybe it's a smile that doesn't reach the eyes. But suddenly, you notice. The mission doesn't feel sacred anymore. It feels rehearsed, polished, hollow. You start hearing the repetition, same stories, same metaphors, same synthetic enthusiasm. The words haven't changed. You have. You start seeing the patterns. That radical transparency, it only flows one way. That meritocracy, it always favors the same names. That culture of belonging, only if you belong to the unspoken tribe. And beneath all the values, there's something colder, control. You notice how praise is weaponized. One colleague is celebrated endlessly, not because they perform, but because they conform. Another disappears from projects overnight. No explanation, no public goodbye, just gone. You ask about it. The response is soft, polite, chilling. Let's focus on what's ahead. You realize something unspoken. This isn't a community. It's a system of behavioral conditioning. Every Slack emoji, every fake celebration, every "thank you for your leadership" comment, they aren't expressions, they're signals to show that you're still inside. You begin to wonder, when did I stop being a person and start becoming a persona? The uniformity starts to feel suffocating. Everyone speaks the same way, wears the same optimism, types the same 3-sentence gratitude posts on LinkedIn, all ending with, "Let's go." But no one's going anywhere. You look around and see the exhaustion, the masked fatigue, the smiles stretched too thin, the eyes that scream what the mouths can't say, "I don't believe anymore." But no one dares speak first, because in a place where belief is survival, doubt is a death sentence. So they stay, they play the game, they wear the robes, they chant the mantras. But you've seen the crack, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. You start noticing how the mission bends, how it expands when it's convenient, shrinks when it's challenged, how leadership rewrites the rules in real time, then calls it strategic pivoting. You realize the values aren't principles, they're props, pulled out when needed, tucked away when inconvenient. One moment, people first. The next moment, mass layoffs over Zoom. One moment, radical ownership. The next, a scandal buried in silence. No accountability, just a new slogan. This is when the mask begins to slip. And what you find underneath isn't evil, it's emptiness. The cathedral isn't crumbling because it was never solid. It was projection, belief layered over bureaucracy, a myth sold to keep you busy, not awake. And the moment you realize this, not just intellectually, but viscerally, you begin to detach. You still show up, still play the part, but inside, something shifts. The spell is broken. You're not angry, you're not even sad, you're just awake.
There's no speech, no great rebellion, no dramatic farewell. One day you just stop believing. You sit at your desk, staring at the dashboard, the calendar, the Slack pings, the town hall slides, and you realize none of this means anything anymore. The mission feels like noise, the values like theater, and your role? A costume you forgot you were wearing. So you begin to pull away. Not loudly, quietly. You stop reacting first in meetings. You let someone else answer. You close your laptop at 6 p.m. just once and feel like you've broken some ancient oath. The indoctrination is still in you. You hear the voice. You're falling behind. You're not a team player. You're wasting your potential. But the voice is no longer yours. It's a recording, a loop, and it's losing power. You begin to see things differently. You notice how leadership hides behind language, always inspiring, never concrete. How urgency is manufactured, how applause is demanded, how burnout is praised in public and ignored in private. You remember the promises. We take care of our people. This is a safe space. We are in this together. And then you remember the layoffs, the silences, the smiles that vanished when results dipped. You remember the funeral disguised as a team call, the pink slips wrapped in gratitude, the hard decisions made behind locked doors. You were never in this together. You were useful until you weren't. So you decide. No ceremony,
No confrontation. You just leave. You write the email, you strip the badge, you return the laptop. You exit the temple. But here's the part no one prepares you for. There's no salvation on the other side, just silence. No one celebrates your courage. No one validates your doubts. Your absence echoes for a day, maybe two, then vanishes in the feed. The system moves on, smoothly, efficiently, as if you were never there. You expected freedom. What you find is emptiness. Because when you leave a religion, you don't just lose the rules, you lose the rituals, the structure, the story. And now, you have to build your own. But there's something else too. Something quiet. Something fragile. A space. A breath. The first real breath you've taken in years. No mantras, no dashboards, no purpose packaged for productivity. Just a question. What do I believe in now that I'm no longer being told who to be? You left the building, but the architecture is still inside you. The calendar haunts your weekends. The tone of urgency still lives in your spine. And sometimes you catch yourself apologizing for resting. That's not failure. That's detox. It takes time to unlearn a faith you never chose. But if this video felt like pulling a hidden thread, like it. And if something in you whispered, "Finally, someone said it," subscribe. The system was never sacred. It was just well-dressed control. And now that you've seen it, what will you build in its place?